Okay, are we ready to start? You may hear some noise out in the hallway. We've got children's classes changing now. There's tons of noise, so I tried to put on my headphones so that it'd be easier to understand me. Can you hear me okay? And can you understand me okay?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes, yes.
Good. Okay, perfect. So let's get started if you're okay. So today's lesson, our culture lesson for today, is about the American South, okay? Because remember, we're on a road trip. Last time we did a general road trip. Now we're getting a little bit more specific. If you notice, can you screen okay? We have this sort of cover this year with a nautical theme, which has nothing to, well, it could have something to do with the South, but really my overall theme, because sometimes these lessons, what we're doing is we're kind of doing private things. We kind of dabble, meaning we take get a taste of everything, but for some things we go a little bit deeper. So I thought today I would give you kind of an overview of the things that we could be thinking about when we think about the American South, and we can decide what our itinerary together is going to be. Last week, we were deciding if we were going to take the Route 66, if we were going to go from Chicago to California, or if we wanted to do the East Coast or the West Coast or coast to coast. This time, we're going a little bit more specifically into the South, and we're going to talk about what that means and some of the things that are that we think about when we think about the South. Now, the South is not my area of expertise because I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Wisconsin. So I would be considered the Midwest or up north if I were living in the South. So we're discovering some things together. Now, I've been to the South, of course, many times, but I'm still no expert because it's kind of like Rome. You could go there for years and years and years and still discover something new. So we're going to kind of go through some things together. Okay, so we're going to start with what is the South? Okay, so these are states that are considered the South. Interesting how Florida doesn't count. But we've got West Virginia, Kentucky, and the pronunciation of the capital is Louisville. Looks like Louisville, but we say Louisville. Okay, we've got Arkansas, which also has an interesting pronunciation. It looks like Arkansas, but it's Arkansas. Okay, which is not the same as Kansas. Kansas is pronounced Kansas, but this is pronounced Arkansas. Bill Clinton is from Arkansas, for example. Okay, then we have Louisiana, which you may have heard of because of New Orleans is famous for the carnival and for Cajun food and all kinds of delicious things. We've got Mississippi, which for Americans, this is an important state because this is a state that helps us count better. When we have to count how many seconds there are, if we have to count up to 5, we might say 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi. So it's a state that for us helps us count. And it's also important for American school children to learn how to spell. So you learn it by saying Mississippi. That's the spelling of Mississippi. Next to that, we have Alabama. The capital of Alabama, of course, is Birmingham. So we might think of civil rights. When we think of Alabama, we've got Atlanta as the capital. We've got South Carolina, Charleston, and North Carolina with Charlotte, okay, and Raleigh, okay, 2 important cities there, okay? So this is basically what we think about when we think about the South.
You
Okay.
missed Texas.
Not
Texas
Florida.
should be in the
Huh?
south too. Texas.
No, Texas does not count in this one. Texas is technically in the southern part of the United States, but it's not considered a part of when we talk about the South. We don't consider Texas. Texas has its own category almost. Okay, so you're right. If we talk about what states are on the southern part of the United States, Texas is definitely in the southern part of the United States, but it's not considered the South when we talk about the South.
And the
Okay,
same for
isn't that
Florida.
strange?
The
And
same for Florida.
Florida. Yeah, Florida is also in the South, but we don't consider it when we talk about the southern states. Again, it's almost like it has its own identity. It's a little bit separate from these. So, Why is that? Good question. I think there are lots of things to explore here, but we're going to deal with these for now, okay? Now, when we think about the South, we tend to think of things that are below the Mason-Dixon line. What is the Mason-Dixon line? Why? I got you the definition here. It's just in the US. It's the boundary between Maryland and Pennsylvania. Okay, where's Maryland and Pennsylvania? Okay, Pennsylvania and Maryland. There you go. Okay. It's taken as the northern limit of the slave-owning states before the abolition of slavery. So when we used to talk about the North and the South, the difference was where were the slaves and where were slaves free. Okay, of course, that line changed, okay, through time. But basically, when we talk about even the mentality now that remains, again, no, America is not still stuck in the Civil War. I mean, things have moved on, but there's definitely some cultural differences between what we consider what above the Mason-Dixon line and below the Mason-Dixon line. But that's when people say, well, what part is the South? This is what we tend to consider. Okay. Now, since we're not experts ourselves, I thought I would think about the culture first. So I wanted to hear what some people say about the culture. So I looked on Ancora, if you've ever seen that website, about the culture of the American South. Why is it this way? We could read this a little bit together. Since there's Silvio, Tiziana, Lanfranco, Luisa, and Bruna. Did I get everyone? Is that everyone? I thought we could each read a little bit just to get some practice here. So I thought, Lanfranco, do you mind reading the first paragraph? So this is the answer. This was a question posed on the internet on a website where people can kind of put their opinions on things. And this was the question: why is the culture of the American South the way it is? So we're going to use this answer to help us sort of understand where we're going to start from. Okay. Lanfranco, can you read us the first paragraph, but go really, really slowly so that we can really process the information while you're reading it?
The
answer
to this question could be a doctoral dissertation. Here are a few observations and thoughts that would be part of the thesis statement of such a dissertation. Disclaimers follow.
Good. Okay. So this is just, we could talk about this forever, but I'm just going to give you a little introduction. That's what the writer is saying. Okay, let's start with Silvio. Can you read this paragraph? Who settled where?
Sure, I got it. Who settled where? You had the aristocrats in Virginia, while Georgia started life as the penal colony. We were Australia before Australia.
Okay, so it's where they sent people when they did bad things, send them to Georgia. Okay, religion. Tiziana, can you read this paragraph for me?
Religion.
Can't hear you though.
That's been a
perfect.
Can you hear me? Religion. That's been
Yes.
a big factor in Southern life for a long damn time. A historian or a professor from Arkansas would be able to defend this idea better than I can. But religion has been important since I was born back in 1969.
Thank you. Bruna, can you read for me rural
You're
economy?
Maybe if you okay, rural economy, you'd be surprised at how much ties into the rural economy. I would argue that this is the single greatest reason for an education deficit in certain parts of the Dixie South. Historically, public schooling and urbanization went hand in hand.
Thank you. Okay, so what about Louisa? Can you read for me here? This is a long one. So if you're okay with that, Louisa?
Yes, so far I think I see factors that lead to the South being more conservative in general. Your mileage will vary depending on whether you live in Atlanta or Austin or Jackson or Jacksonville or Charlotte. But you will find that the South runs the gamut from moderate conservative that these days voting Democrat to far right. But it comes down to having a rural economy, strict religious beliefs, and less schooling. All of this encourage conservatism and resistance to change.
Thank you. But there's more. Let's see. I'm going to move down here. It's trying to make this big enough so you can actually see it. Okay, should we go back to, I think everybody read so far one time, right? Let's go to Lanfranco, slavery.
Slavery. But I don't read here, eh? You have to tear up the page. Slavery, I don't read.
We might prefer.
You can't see it? Can you see it?
That's fair.
No,
No, this one, slavery. Now I'm reading it. I can read slavery.
Okay.
We might prefer not to talk about this one, but it is a factor. A rural agrarian economy and slavery went hand to hand. But in America, in the South, as we all know, slavery went hand to hand with racism. I would argue that here is where Afro-American or students of Afro-American history could defend this idea far better than I could. The Civil War.
Thank you. Oh, okay, we're gonna stop there for you. Thank you. Now we have the Civil War. Silvio, can you read the Civil War? I wonder.
Sure. Can you show me the text, the entire text?
Yes, I'm gonna give you want me to just share the page with you here? Because what I can do is just share it. It's probably easier to read in that way.
We see
Just see
only
if I
the
can move
first
this.
2 lines.
Okay.
Okay, then let me do this. I'm gonna give you guys the link to it here so that if you want to just go directly to the page, you can. Let's see if I can
Okay.
open up the sharing mechanism here. Actually, I'm gonna give you the link now. See if you can open it, if it lets you or not. Let me see if I can stop sharing here for a moment. And I'm going to put this in the chat. Okay, can you see the chat? Okay, so if you're on your computer, you can actually try to open that document. Does that work for you? I'm going to go back to sharing the document here. Okay, let's see. General access. Restricted. I'm going to say anyone with the link is a viewer. Okay. Okay, so it should be now that with that link, you can actually open the document. Okay, Sylvia, did you see that?
No.
Caroline has started. Oh,
Yeah.
In the chat of this, you should be able to click on the link if you're at home, and then you can actually go to
I'm
page,
using the
whatever
cell.
page
I'm
this
not
is.
sure because I'm using the cell phone.
Oh, so it's harder for you to read. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, the Civil War.
probably why.
I wonder how deep that legacy runs. I'm a wild Southerner, born in Florida and raised in Georgia. I grew up with the ambivalence that comes from an idea that it was North versus South, as opposed to Union versus Confederation.
The Confederacy states were the South, Union in the North.
Yeah, I can no longer
We
see
learn.
the text. Okay.
Oh no. Okay. Who can? Oh, then let me have Bruna. Can you continue? We learn.
Okay.
Now, okay,
We
now I
learn
can
to
see.
subtly
And
identify.
when I
Versus have I to go on? Do I have to?
Oh, can you see it though?
We learn
Bruna, we learn to subtly identify ourselves.
to subtly identify ourselves with the Confederacy. And when I say we, I'm including those of us white liberal Southerners who grew up in cities like Atlanta and were raised to know that slavery was wrong and that racism is wrong. Yes, even we grew up hating General Sherman. Yes, we know he was on the right side, but we still hated him.
Okay, thank you. I think maybe I have a volunteer for this next one because some of you can see, but some of you might have difficulty seeing. Would someone like to read? I think we can all.
Yeah, okay.
Silvio, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we can all see how the ambiguity is playing out now that the racists who have been keeping their mouths shut for a few decades are making their presence known.
You can continue. No, the South.
Okay. No, the South is not entirely racist, and we don't have a monopoly on racism. But that has been a part of us since slavery became a part of our economy. All those years ago, no, it's not always comfortable to talk about these matters, but sooner or later, we must. They are all true.
Thank you. I'm going to finish this off saying, I think that the above points are still not enough to get to the root of matters. There is so much more to the story than this, which is why if I were to write a dissertation, I would definitely want co-authors to discuss matters that I may not have thought of or that I don't have time to write about because I'd be too busy writing about other elements. But that's why my answers are not supposed to be the last word. So this is one person's opinion on why the South is the way it is. So the factors would be, what did they say, slavery, religion, is the other thing, poverty, and deficit in education at times, also class division. Okay, Civil War. Then there's a second answer that adds to this. It says, I concur with everything you said, but would add 2 points. Would someone like to read the first one here after the Civil War?
Rural economy.
No, it looks like Lanfranco, can you read this one, number 1, after the Civil War? Can you see that?
I don't read the lines. I don't see the lines perfect. Not erratic. It is.
Did you try to open the document?
I open it, but I'm reading here. After the Civil War, many Southern states, as soon as Reconstruction ended, put in place state constitution which deliberately sought to retard economic development. Is correct? I'm reading
Yes, that's correct.
the right paragraph.
Yes, that's correct. Perfect.
Continue
if you can.
And achieved result was largely to freeze a social hierarchy in place. Since economic development tended to increase social mobility, retarding it meant that if you were poor, that is obvious state. And if your family owned 400 acres with a fine or houses on him, then you stayed atop the social pyramid because there were no nouvelle riches around to challenge your social position. By getting far wealthier, then you buy running a factory or a railroad. Economically, this meant that the South for a very long time retained a largely agrarian economy, based on a small number of cash crops, cotton, corn, tobacco, later on peanuts, and a few others depending on the region. There were occasional regional exceptions to this. Then I don't have any more words. There
Okay, a
were
rural
occasional
situation,
regional
e.g., the
exceptions.
industrial city
Overall,
of Chattanooga in Tennessee.
overall situation, e.g., the industrial city of Chattanooga in Tennessee. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're adding to that law that kept a very social, that kept the social hierarchy in place. So it stayed agrarian rather than developing into a more industrial area of the country. Okay. And the second thing was many regions of the South, for example, e.g., the Tennessee Valley, where I grew up, historically were bitterly impoverished, so very, very poor, both before the Civil War and for a long time after. Long-term poverty leaves its stamp on a region and the people who live there. And a constitutional and legal framework which discourages economic development has a way of perpetuating
That poverty.
We miss you, Caroline.
Okay, some a place that was kind of frozen for a long time, frozen economically, socially, etc. And that sort of gave way for a different culture than maybe the rest of the country. Okay, now I'm going to go back to sharing my document, which is going to be hopefully a little bit less reading for you now. Can you see my document?
No.
No, not yet.
I wonder why. What do you see? Are you on computers or on phones? Bruna, can you see my screen?
Okay, now
Yes.
I can see.
Now I can.
Oh, weird. So it's like on a delay almost. It takes a while, maybe. Okay. I'm going to come back to these. I'm moving my way down. Um, I'll read a couple of these to you, maybe not so many of them. But these are some quotes. I love to hear what the Southern people say about themselves. I love this one. It says, I'm trying to make it as big as I can here. She was so Southern that she cried tears that came straight from the Mississippi, as in the Mississippi River. And she always smelled faintly of cottonwood and peaches. Okay, because peaches, the South is famous for their delicious peaches, Georgia peaches in particular, right? The Pisgah. Um, Another one. Because I was born in the South, I'm a Southerner. If I had been born in the North, the West, or the Central Plains, I would be just a human being. So there's an identity with the South that maybe the rest of the country doesn't have. Then we get to a food one. Southern barbecue is the closest thing we have in the US to Europe's wines and cheeses. Drive 100 miles and the barbecue changes. Okay. Then a couple of these quotes talk about the weather. Okay. It's hot in the South, really hot in the South. So if snow comes down to the South, it's like down, right? Because it's just not normal. But then there's also the idea of the South that we see in films that's not necessarily reflective of the South and how it is today. So it says, if you only know the South as shown by Hollywood, like in the films, then you don't know the South at all. If you care to define the South as a poor, rural region with lousy race relations, that South survives only in geographical shreds and patches, and most Southerners don't live there anymore. So here we have the opposite point of view. The person talking about the South that we read in the first part was saying, okay, rural, race, okay. And this person saying, no, it's a thing of the past. Everything's different now. So you can see how there are lots of different perceptions and how things are. So we can't have one idea. So there are lots of lenses we can use to look at the South, okay? In my South, the most treasured things passed down from generation to generation are the family recipes. Okay, we don't call them receipts, we call them recipes. These are take 1 cup of flour and 2 tablespoons of butter, whatever they are. Okay, it's a recipe. And then we finish with this: more food. We do like our cobblers, which we're going to look at. What's a cobbler? And pies and other
Calzolai.
sweets. Huh?
Calzolai.
Yeah, you do, I bet. Southerners know you can't be considered a serious Southern cook if you don't know how to make a peach cobbler. Okay. And it says, this is why Southerners are always trying to feed you. Southerners equate food with love. So if you love what they cook, they are sure to love you back. So I think this is the lens we're going to start with our little trip to the South. Okay. There's just a paragraph here that talks about the Southern identity that does feel different than other parts of the country. There's a lot of nature, there are mountains, there's a diversity of things to see in nature, but there's also a whole food culture, which is different than the rest of the country. Although, of course, some of the foods also made it to the north, but I'm going to share some of those with you now. So there are many ways to visit the South, of course. You could do it through music. Country music famously tends to come from the South, even though even that is mainstream now. But the origins of country music are from the South. You could look at the South through history. You could look at it through civil rights. You could look at it through the Civil War. There are lots of things we can look at when we talk about the South. But of course, everybody's favorite is food. So this is a peach cobbler. Okay. And it actually, there's a link where you can actually watch and learn how to make a peach cobbler. But it's basically, of course, they're using the best stuff. And in the South, we have delicious peaches. And so the base of this is just, it's just peaches that are in, peaches and then with a little crust on top and then ice cream. It's very, very simple recipes.
Cobbler.
And I think, isn't that what good food is all about? High quality ingredients and just great food, simple. Okay. So that's a peach cobbler. But they're also famous. I know I shouldn't start with dessert, but I was hungry when I did this lesson, so I started with the end. But there are also other famous things. We don't tend to think about American food as having a lot of vegetables, but this is a typical dish of the South. Collard greens. Do you know what those are, collard greens in Italian? Does anybody know what collard greens are?
Color
Buy
green.
them here, but I never. Yeah, they're like a green long thing. You can buy them here too, but in the American South, they're fundamental. They're usually cooked up with some kind of, huh?
Cavolo. Cavolo.
Cavolo, verde.
No, it's not cavolo. It would be like I'm thinking it's
Color.
I don't
In the
even
dictionary there is
color.
cavolo. Color
It's definitely
cavolo.
not cavolo.
Translate cavolo.
Yeah, yeah. Let me see if I can find a picture of them on what they look like when they're. I'm just gonna do a okay. Okay, see my screen? It's okay. Like I guess it could be in the cabbage family, but it's like a leafy green. It looks more like spinach than it does. Maybe it's more like blede, we would say in Trieste. Do you have something like that? Blede? Are you Googling it? Anyway, it's kind of like it's a green leafy vegetable that in the north we don't even eat this stuff. It's just in the south that they eat this stuff.
Color.
Go back to our
Color, there is cavolo, the first one.
lesson. The first one is cobble, but it's definitely not that. Like I look at more as like this one. You can, yeah, I don't know. Do you see that? Can you see my screen right here?
Yeah.
That familiar to you? I've seen it here, but I don't know what it's called. So
It's in the middle
not quite.
between the cabbage and la verde, tra il cavolo e la verde.
Yeah, it could be. So something in there. Anyway, that family. Okay. I'm gonna go back to my, but that this is actually this page is not only am I still sharing my screen? I hope so. Yes. We're specifically looking at soul food today. So food is Southern cooking, but it's more specifically African American cooking, just because I find it more interesting. Because white people food in America is kind of boring. So I love African American cooking. So collard greens is the first thing that I think of. Then we have, of course, the very, very famous mac and cheese, which is macaroni and cheese. It's a baked pasta dish with lots of cheese. And it's like the cheese is like a tomato sauce. Okay. So it's not like a quattro formaggi. It's more like one kind of cheese. It's
Maccheroni al
usually like
formaggio.
huh?
Maccheroni al formaggio. I ordered them on Amazon. I'm waiting for my package. I ordered them on Amazon.
Okay, so you have like that'll come like a powdered, it's a little strange. I'm telling you in advance. The one that we see on the screen is homemade. So this would be with pasta. You would make a bechamel sauce. You would put the cheddar cheese directly into the bechamel and you would
Butter.
mix this up and then you would butter, of course, and then some cream, probably heavy cream. You would put that in the oven and you would let that bake just to get a crispy crust on top. Now, Sylvia, if you ordered macaroni and cheese, it's probably going to come in a box and it will probably have like a packet of
Yeah, there's a
powdered
box,
cheese, which
a carton.
yeah, it's actually kind of strange, but it's actually pretty delicious, I have to say. It's bad for
Yeah,
you.
I
It's
would
very bad, but
prepare them in a pan.
sure. Yeah, you will. You will. That'll you just have to add milk and butter to that one. Okay, so mac and cheese is the first one. Then, of course, the famous fried chicken. Fried chicken is very important in the South. Um, Now, fried chicken is important all the South. They love to fry everything. They also fry steak. So there's called chicken fried steak also, where you take red meat and you treat it like it's chicken, same with the same spices and everything, and you fry it like that. Is Tiziana, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. For a second, I thought I lost you. Are you okay? Okay,
Yeah, I was
good.
listening.
Oh no, it's okay. I just wanted to make sure I don't want to lose anybody because last week I was sorry that we didn't get to connect. So I'm worried. I want to make sure you're with us the entire time this time. Last time there was a technical problem, right?
Yes.
Okay. So fried chicken. Then we have this one, shrimp. And what's under here? It almost looks like polenta, doesn't it? But it's not polenta. It's called grits. Okay. Now, do you know what grits are? Has anybody ever had any grits?
Yeah.
Just spelled like this, grits.
Great. Great.
It's grits. Yeah, this is very southern. We do not have grits in the north at all. And there are different types of grits, and southern people are very particular about their grits. It's a little bit, like I said, it's a kind of like a polenta. It's a porridge and it's made with dried maize. So in that way, it's a little bit like
Porridge.
polenta, but it's sort of particular. Yeah, it's a porridge. They call it hominy
Corn
or
porridge.
maize.
Corn
Huh?
porridge.
Yeah, it's not, but make sure that you don't want to confuse it with porridge as in oatmeal. Oatmeal would be fiocchi di avena. This is more of a maize, so closer to polenta, closer, but not quite. And I don't know, I think it's the way it's treated, which is a little bit different than like polenta. Okay. But this seafood stuff, you could tell like Louisiana, anywhere where there's water, there's a lot of seafood in their food. Okay. And then we've got dirty rice. Dirty rice would be like, it could be vegetables and it could be beans. It can have sausage in there. It can have cheese. So it's not cheese. It could have chicken in there. So dirty rice is also a Creole dish. Okay. Again, it could be spicy because soul food, African American cooking is often very spicy. So I love to show these images because they're a little bit different than when people's images of American food are usually like hamburgers and hot dogs, but actually, American cooking changes depending where you are, and Southern cooking is definitely has some different dishes in it. So we've got, and then finally, shrimp and sausage gumbo. Okay, so this
Yeah,
is like a soup.
especially in Louisiana, the cuisine would be very different in Louisiana.
Absolutely. And this is definitely Louisiana. And this would have the Creole kind of touch on it. So the spiciness and the seafood and that. So these are sort of typical. I was going to show you also the page I got these from, because there's also some really interesting other ones. So I'm clicking on, you should be able to see my page. I'm just scrolling up. This is a food called Soul Food Cooking. Do you see my page?
Gumbo.
There's macaroni and cheese picture. And this actually
Gumbo.
has, can you see my page? You can see like the
Ah,
macaroni and cheese.
the gumbo here.
It's not, you can't see it very, huh?
Gumbo. It's called
Gumbo.
gumbo.
We say
Gumbo.
gumbo.
Yeah. Yes, you say gumbo. Okay. If you can you see my page with this one here with fried cabbage? Do you see
The
that?
catfish.
Yeah.
You can see the cat. Yeah. Okay, so
Soul
I'm going to
food
give you
cooking.
this link. I'm going to put this link into our chat. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Okay. And I'm going to open up our chat. Where's the chat? I haven't used Zoom in a while. I don't know where anything is. Okay. So if you look in the chat, probably on the right side of your screen, or if you're Bruna or if you're Louise, I can also send you these links. But this is the page. The second one has the recipes for all of these things. So I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. Can you see that? Okay, so fried catfish is on here, seafood gumbo, and yams. Those are those latte americane that you call them. The orange ones that are sweet. Okay, lots of meat here, but also seafood, oxtails, and then famous peach cobbler again. So peaches are a big deal in the South. But there's also cornbread, so again, made with that maize again. Deviled eggs, one of my favorite recipes here. Turkey wings, jambalaya, another like Sylvia was saying, this is food from Louisiana, and this is Creole cooking. Okay. Banana pudding, delicious. Green beans and potatoes, Cajun fried shrimp, cornbread dressing. Oh, now I'm all hungry from seeing all these. And then, of course, sweet potato pie, which in the North we would make pumpkin pie, but in the South they often make sweet potato pie. Okay. And then, yeah, there's some cakes in here. So now we've got a good idea of what the soul food cooking looks like. There's some spice to it. It's different depending on where you are. Do you live near water? Do you not, etc. You'll notice that soul food cooking too originated, a lot of it's vegetarian. I mean, we just saw lots of fried chicken is not vegetarian, of course. But often the soul food is often vegetarian or vegan because it originated, some of the recipes came over with the slaves, or at least the knowledge of these things came over with the slaves on the ships. Even the seeds they brought with them and planted them. And so, like even the sweet potato, a lot of these recipes were the things that they were growing because meat was scarce. It was difficult to find meat because the slave owners took all the good parts or the good parts of the animal and gave the sort of the less prestigious parts to their slaves. So a lot of the foods is basic, the rice and things that were grown there anyway. But then with bits of meat, not necessarily as a main thing. So actually, soul food can be unhealthy for you because there's a lot of fried stuff, but it can also be very, very healthy. In fact, there's a movement now in the American South, but around the United States, led by African Americans to go towards vegan because they look at that as being something that's actually reflects their culture better, and and has a healthier approach. So, it's sort of an interesting thing how history can kind of come back in different ways for us. So I'm going to share my screen again. If I can find that little thing. Where did I share it last time? Wait, let me close my chat box here. And I'm going to go back to my lesson. But where is I'm going to go to my screen. Maryland. Okay, so we did our little, if we were taking a trip in the South and we wanted to go for food, we could decide where we wanted to go depending on where they had the best gumbo, for example. But we could also do a music tour. We could go see Elvis's home. Does anybody know about Graceland? Did you ever hear about Graceland?
It's a Graceland.
Do you know what Graceland is, Giancarlo?
Yeah, Graceland is the home of Elvis Presley. Memphis, I think.
Exactly.
Memphis.
Right. Do you know anything about it? What have you heard about it? What do you know about Elvis's house?
I don't know particular. I don't know. It is a museum.
Okay.
A lot of people go to visit it. No, it is a lot
Yeah.
kitsch. It is a lot kitsch.
Yeah, it's very kitsch because it's from the
But
1970s.
anyways,
But you could,
it's very interesting, I think.
yeah, I think I've never been there, but I have a sister who loves Elvis and she goes all the time. Every time she goes to Memphis, she has to go to Elvis's house. So Elvis's house, you can visit Elvis's plane. He had a private plane. He had this house with all kinds of crazy, very 1970s. But you can definitely visit if you love Elvis. In America, up until a few years ago, many people thought that Elvis was still alive. So there was this, he's still alive, he's not dead. You know, nobody wanted to even accept the fact that Elvis was dead. So Elvis was a very one of those figures in American music who was basically brought soul music or black music to the white crowd. So I mean, I remember my mother telling me that my grandmother thought he was just obscene because he danced and you could see his hips. He was just too sexual, right? So he was really changed music in the United States. And of course he had this very over exaggerated life and things. So there are many people who want to go visit Elvis's house. So you can actually go to the website and check that out. But there's also Dolly Parton. I don't know if you know who she is, but she is a national treasure. Dolly Parton, one of the most
Parton is a
important
country
figures in American
singer.
music. Country
Country
music,
singer.
but everybody loves her. Giant feminist. We love Dolly Parton. She was born into poverty, and became a very important musician. She's everybody's favorite. Like, even if you don't like country music, you have to love Dolly. And there are many places, for example, the Grand Ole Opry, which is basically the center of country music going way, way, way back. You can still visit the Grand Ole Opry, and that's where, of course, she got her start. You can go, there's a place called Dollywood, which is like her amusement park. You can go to the Country Music Hall of Fame. So Nashville, Tennessee is important for country music. And of course, Dolly is for us, she's an icon. She's an important person for that. So if I were choosing to, I would, but anywhere that has to do with Dolly Parton. But we could also take a literary tour because you love to read. I think it's fun to go and visit where some of these where these authors lived, the places they were writing about, or other culture, maybe like film, maybe like Gone with the Wind, maybe Fried Green Tomatoes, some of these films that took place in the South. Okay, but here this particular tour celebrates writers of classical Southern literature in Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. You can go see Truman Capote's house. Okay, but you could do the classic one, or you could do the vampire tour of New Orleans. If you like Anne Rice, who wrote those vampire books, like Interview with a Vampire, which was made into a film in the 1990s with Tom Cruise, who was like the wrong person to play that part. The Vampire Lestat was one of those. So Queen of the Damned. So all of these books written by Anne Rice, who is a native of Louisiana. So she wrote so vividly about these neighborhoods in New Orleans. So they're definitely unofficial witch tours you can go on, witch tours and vampire tours, because I think Louisiana has that kind of mysterious bit to it. So that might be something we want to do. Or we can do a historical, where you can look at we can go to a Civil War reenactment. You can see different battles. I don't know. That's cup of tea, but many people seem to like that kind of thing. Or we could just go on the civil rights tour. We could go see Charlotte home of Luther King. We could go to Birmingham, Alabama. We could go to Selma. There's so many places that are important part of the civil rights movement in America that we could check out. So those are some of the things we could look at. So those are some of the ideas I had. I just thought, yes, Lanfranco.
I visited the Martin Luther King tomb in Atlanta, no?
Yeah, in
2 years
Atlanta.
ago.
Nice.
And then
How was
I
that
visited,
experience?
yes, and always in Atlanta, I visited Stone Mountain, the opposite, Stone Mountain.
Uh-huh.
You know, no? You know
No, tell us.
what is Stone Mountain?
Stone Mountain. No.
In Atlanta, in the neighborhood of Atlanta. There is a big
Yeah, tell me about it.
mountain. There is a big mountain like Rushmore.
Okay. And what's on it?
With engraved the heroes of the Confederacy.
Okay, sure. So you wanted to visit both sides, right?
Yes,
You go to
both
the
sides, no?
hero of sure,
But-
and I think that there's space for that. I think it's interesting to look at things from both sides
And
because in
then
the South, there
and
a lot
then
of Confederate leaders are
visited
still around.
Gettysburg, the Gettysburg Park,
Sure.
the Gettysburg Battlefield Park in Pennsylvania, I think.
Okay, good.
It's
So
very nice.
you like to go. So your frame is you like to go to historic places, then, right?
Yes. And
Interesting.
I would like to say another little thing. No, you don't.
Sure.
Maybe you don't know, but the biggest history of the American Civil War, written in only one book, in only one volume, was written by an Italian in 1964, 100 after the end of the Civil War. No, it is a very big book in only one volume. No,
one volume.
only one volume, 1,100 pages, but wonderful written in Italian, of course, in Italian. No, and the writer was Luraghi. He was a communist.
Really?
Yes,
did you read the entire book?
Please.
Did you read the entire book?
Yes, I have here. This one. It's Einaudi.
Very well done. Wow. So
yes,
you could go around the South with that book.
Unità, no? He wrote in the communist Italian newspaper. But I loved the American Civil War. And reading,
interesting.
It is written really in a wonderful Italian, but I noticed that he had a little weakness for the last part.
What does that mean?
A weakness. He loved a little bit more the South.
Well, could be. Sure. That's okay.
He's
allowed to have an opinion.
It was communist, but not so much.
Yeah, that's all right.
A little, no? A little. It was more romantic.
Okay, good. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you all the same question now as we finish up our conversation about the South. We just got a little taste and overview. So if you're going to create an itinerary for your trip to the South, what frame of reference would you like to use? Are there states you want to visit? Is it because of the food? Is it because of the literature? Is it because you're just interested in something, an event in particular? I want to ask Bruna, where are we going in the South and what do you want to see?
Oh, where you go, I don't know because it wasn't enough for me to understand. But what I like most is to visit places and to watch how people live there. So I would like to have a tour and to visit as many places as I can or could.
Okay, so Bruna is more of an anthropologist. She wants to see how people live. She wants to go there, visit the places, see what the people are doing, where they're going, what kind of, maybe go to the same cafe every day so she can see the same people and see what their habits are, but visit as many different places as possible, right?
Yes,
That seems okay, Bruna?
yeah, there are many different places, but I don't have enough clue to understand what
Sure.
would be
Yeah.
better to
So
go.
yeah, it's hard to plan a trip when you don't even know what's there. So that's why I like to have like, okay, what am I going to look at? Am I going to look at historic places? Do I want to look at the center of, I like to have a frame, or something that I use or to guide me. And then I do research on that. In your lesson, I'll put some landmarks, some places you could think about visiting, okay? Let me ask Tiziana. Tiziana, if you were going to visit the South, you've never been there, you don't know that much about it, what do you think you want to use to help you find your way around? What are you going to look for?
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes. I'd like to visit Louisiana and New Orleans in particular. I'd like to see the events and to try the Creole dishes. I saw some documentaries about New Orleans. I heard that it's a dangerous places as well. But I'd like to visit that city because in my opinion, it's very interesting. And I like the buildings, the way they built the buildings. They have I like that style because in the old part of the city there is a peculiar style in buildings, and I found it interesting. Um, it's good to take photos as well.
Ah, you liked photography as well. Yeah, so in the,
Yes,
the Louisiana also has some French architecture too, right? So in the, the French Quarter has its own particular, it looks more European than the rest of America. So yeah, I think New Orleans is a great choice. You could spend just time there. And I think it's because of the food, the people, the music is amazing there, and the
yes.
culture. Good. Thank you, Tiziana. What about
Thank you.
Louisa? Louisa, where would you like to go?
I don't know, because I would like to reserve a car and then going around the places in the south to discover the nature and going to have a cruise on the Mississippi because it's very famous, Mississippi. And so,
Good. So renting a car is a great idea because in the South, you're not going to get very far unless you have a car, that's for sure. So you want to rent a car and just go around and see what you run into and see some nature, like maybe go to some
yes,
natural or some national parks and see the Smoky Mountains, for example. The Appalachian Trail you can hike, lots of interesting places. Good. Thank you. Silvio, what would you like to visit in the South?
So basically, unfortunately, I don't have a car, so I would probably go to visit Louisville, Atlanta, or New Orleans because you know that I really like skyscrapers and high rises. I am amazed of them.
So you want a more urban setting to go for your trip. Very interesting. Louisville is
Yeah,
famous also for they have a factory there for baseball bats because the most important baseball bat is called a Louisville Slugger. So there are plenty of places to visit that are very particular, even in all these places. Yeah, I'm interested in the South, and I keep wanting to just go on a trip in the South because I'm interested in history and how people live, and I'm also there's so many things. It's so different than the rest of the country that and I've been, like I said, I've been a few times, but I've never really done a concentrated sort of road trip, whereas I would really like to do a road trip, maybe with a couple of friends and just go do a Thelma and Louise and just check it all out. So I think
Yeah.
there are lots of places for us to check out. What I'm hoping is that for the lesson that I send you, of course, it's not a comprehensive list of anything because we only have 1 hour. And again, none of us are experts. So we're discovering things together. But what I hope it does is it maybe gets you moving in some different directions. Maybe you'll think about reading literature that's set in the South. Some of my favorite books that made me want to visit the South, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil made me want to visit Savannah, Georgia, for example, or The Help, if you ever saw that film, or To Kill a Mockingbird. You know, some of these books that kind of get into the psyche of people in the South. They give us a little window into a different culture. It's like a different country. And actually, each state has its own culture. So we're talking about the South as if it's one thing. Obviously, it's different because every state has its peculiarities. So anyway,
Yeah.
but I wanted to talk a little bit about the South because I think we spend a lot of time talking about the big cities, but sometimes it's fun to look at regions too and what they have to offer as well.
Yeah,
So
I
I hope you
forgot to
enjoyed this
say
little
that.
lesson. Silvio, yes, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
forgot to say that I would like to take an excursion in the bayous.
Where? In the bayous.
Yes.
Yeah, good idea. Good idea. Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Next week, is it going to be okay to meet at 5 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock? Just next week. Is that going to be okay for you? Can you still come?
Of course.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
At 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, because next week I'm in Palermo there's an opening of an American corner in Palermo, and the event begins at 6 o'clock. So I'm going for the event. I can't miss it. So I'm gonna confirm with the people down there that they have a good Wi-Fi connection. I'm gonna find a closet somewhere, and I'm gonna meet you at 5 o'clock if that's okay. So we'll send out a confirmation. But that way I still see you, even if it's an hour early. Sorry about that. It just happens to be that next week I have this trip, okay? Luisa and Bruna, is that okay for you next week? It's at 5 o'clock instead of 6?
Yes, yes.
It's okay for me? Yes.
Oh,
Me
good.
too,
Thank you for
yes.
being so
It's okay for me
flexible.
too.
Oh, thank you, Tiziana. Good. Well,
Only
then I
one
will see you
thing,
next week at 5 o'clock. What?
one little thing. Almost the whole meeting, you were completely still. We
I
couldn't
know.
see you moving and it makes me even more difficult to understand because if I see you, also the other friends apart from Silvio who isn't visible, Tiziana as well, Cantagalli are perfect in the images, but you are
Okay, so it's mine. Mine is bad.
or also with what can I say, like bubble, you know, sometimes
Okay.
your voice
Often it's still. You are still.
doesn't arrive.
Oh, really? I was frozen. So, but you could hear my
Frozen,
voice or no?
frozen.
Okay. Maybe there's a problem with our internet. It could be the weather also. So sorry about that. Hopefully
No,
next week
no.
is better. Then the week after that, I'll do it from home and see if it works better. So thank you for the feedback so that I know where I should do it. Because here, if the internet, we have Fibra, but if it's not working well, then I know that I shouldn't do it here. Thank you for that. I'm sorry, but that's why I
No,
do
no,
the
no.
lesson. I send you
It's
the
okay,
lesson so at
but
least you can go through it. Thank you.
oh, thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the
Bye-bye.
conversation. Good night. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye bye.